You're listening to Do That Well with your host, Brenda Brown, and today joining with me, special guest, Victor Lindstrom. Victor is my husband. You've probably heard me talk about him on the podcast before. Karen is taking a small vacation, but don't worry, we will still have an episode for you today that is all about the real experiences and how to turn them into life lessons. Truly unscripted, honest, funny, genuine, passionate perhaps as well, a series of conversations where we will explore every aspect of human interaction and provoke each other to do life well. And today we are going to talk about the 36 questions to fall in love.
Can you ask someone 36 questions and immediately marry them? Find out now.
Probably not. But the 36 questions to fall in love, for those of you who may not have heard of this, it's a pretty popular concept. It was actually developed in the 1990s by psychologists Arthur Aron and Elaine Aron. I may be mispronouncing their last names, and as well as some other researchers, to essentially see if two strangers can develop an intimate connection just from asking each other a series of increasingly personal questions. The general idea is that mutual vulnerability will foster closeness. And to quote the study's authors, one key pattern associated with the development of a close relationship among peers is sustained, escalating, reciprocal, personal self-disclosure. Allowing oneself to be vulnerable with another person can be exceedingly difficult, so this exercise really forces the issue. The questions are broken into 3 sets, and as the sets go on, they increase in the amount of personal disclosure, I suppose, that's required from the other person in the conversation. Our cat wants to make an appearance today too.
All right, say hello, Kitty, if you insist.
We have Kiki with us for those of you that aren't watching us on video. So this combination of self-disclosure, perceived similarities, and being open to getting close to each other is what's been found to accelerate the creation of feelings and closeness and intimacy. At the end of this study, or this creation of these questions, because there was a study involved as well, of course, essentially the psychologists concluded, are we producing real closeness, yes or no? They think that the closeness produced in the studies is experienced as similar in many important ways to felt closeness in naturally occurring relationships that develop over time. On the other hand, it seems unlikely that the procedure produces loyalty, dependence, commitment, or other relationship aspects that might take longer to develop. I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind with these 36 questions, is that they really did find that it can produce closeness, but there are all these other elements that are present in relationships that make them what they are. It's not just this idea of closeness. As they said, there's loyalty, dependence, commitment, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's an important caveat to this.
Yeah, and there are things that you want in your partner that cannot be answered with a single question.
Right.
You gotta find out what's going on.
Exactly.
You're not just it's sort of hilarious that this is like, he was like, how far can we take this? It's like, you can get to know each other.
Right.
But that's about it. You're not.
Well, and what's interesting as well is that now it has become this really popular, thing. There's all these articles and magazines, and there's the 36 questions to fall in love, and people have really clombed onto this idea that it helps you fall in love, where I don't think, and I can't speak for the psychologists obviously, but I'm making an assumption here when I say that I doubt that was their intention, was for it to become this phenomenon where everybody's trying. There's probably even TV shows where they're like, two strangers, there's going to be 36 questions. Right. Will they fall in love?
Yeah.
And that's just, I doubt that was the intention of the psychologist.
It seems like a lot of these questions could be subbed in for a different sort of question.
I agree.
Yeah.
With that being said, that is a nice foray into the questions themselves. We're going to pick, as I said, there's 36 of them, which is a lot, and we only have half an hour, and we were probably already quite a bit into that half an hour. So we are not going to go through all 36 questions. We're going to pick 2 or 3, maybe 4 from each set. If you'll remember, there's 3 sets, and they're going to get more and more personal. And I'm just kind of interested to hear, Victor, what you think about these questions, whether or not you think they would actually, help you form closeness with a person. If you think it's just an absolutely ridiculous question, maybe there are some other examples that you would have on how you could sub things out. Because as you said a moment ago, you feel like a lot of these could be subbed for different questions. So maybe you'll have some new questions to add to the mix.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll show Arthur Aron and Elaine Aron, a thing or two about questions here.
Well, I think the very fact that they're premeditated questions takes away from the natural, flow of a potential interaction and relationship developing.
Right, because we're forcing closeness. I mean, that was part of the
study.
The study. They wanted to see if they could force closeness.
Yeah,
so that element is there. So from set 1, I think one of the ones that jumped out at me was, for what in your life do you feel most grateful? Now, this is in set 1, and I think that this is actually a really probing question. I'm surprised that this isn't further into set 2 or set 3.
Even set 3, yeah. What in your life do you feel the most grateful?
This is, we're pretending that this is with a stranger.
Right.
This is the first time you've ever met someone, and you're asking them, for what in your life do you feel most grateful? That's why I say it feels very probing, actually.
It does, yeah.
I don't think that I would... No, that's not true at all. I take that back. I would feel extremely comfortable asking somebody this the first time I've met them, but I like to get to the point.
You would ask that, yeah.
And I probably have asked somebody a question like this before when I first met them, and it likely did make them uncomfortable.
But that can be kind of fun.
Do you feel like that would be... If someone asked you that for the first time you're meeting them, what would be going through your head, other than trying to formulate a response?
I mean, I would think that they were really like frou-frou and like green and all about like energy and auras and stuff, like
frou-frou.
And not like, kind of just like ethereal, kind of.
I think
like
you mean woo-woo, perhaps.
Yes, woo-woo. That's the one.
Okay.
That's the one. Woo-woo.
It's like frou-frou is a little more like prim and proper.
Yeah. Because, I mean, the answer should be fairly obvious for what in your life, like, your life is what you should feel the most grateful for. And the what is like, is it the MacBook? Is it like having an apartment? Like the most valuable thing is probably going to be your closest relationship, but it says for what, not for who in your life do you feel the most grateful?
I think that's a very small. I think many people would answer with a person, or they might not stick to the what. I think that's a bit of a
maybe too stickler on
I think you're getting a little little stuck on that particular word. But with that being said, I like where you're taking this, because I didn't even think about this with this question, but the way that you're interpreting it already shows me that you could really reveal some core values about a person with this question. Because as you said, if they go for something that's material versus something that's relational or otherwise, I can't think of, I guess, money or people or things.
Yeah, we're kind of money and things are kind of the same here.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I can't really think other than relationships or monetary or, more material, I guess.
Yeah.
But that is, I think, a very revealing thing.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
I feel like most people, after a little bit of reflection, would probably say they're most grateful for their family, unless they just have a horrible family, in which case they would have probably most likely sort of made a new family somewhere that wasn't
their friends,
a blood relation. Yeah.
Right.
Like that's the thing I'm most grateful for, is like my family and friends.
I don't know that that's a most people thing, though. Just to throw it out there. If you're listening and you're like, I 100% would say that one of the things I'm most grateful for is my career, like, send us an email. I'm curious. I'm curious to see what other people would say.
Yeah.
Because, just because that's what you would say, I think there's a lot of different answers out there.
That's true.
Okay. One more question from set 1. If you could wake up tomorrow having gained any one quality or ability, what would it be? This is really fun because my mind immediately goes to like
superpowers. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Who doesn't want superpowers tomorrow morning?
That's, right? I would hope that that's where a lot of people's minds would go, but that's probably...
That's not... But
I
maybe
suppose
maybe
we
it's a
probably
little,
ended up with the right person because we
yeah.
both went there. But I think this is a really cool question. And again, a little surprised that it's in set 1. So when we get into set 2 and set 3, I'm curious to see how personal these questions really get, because I feel like we're already coming out the gate with some hard hitters.
Yeah, that most grateful thing really set the tone.
The most grateful, and then if you gained one quality or ability. Again, this is really cool because you are seeing that in the way in which someone answers would reveal so much about your core values, or just about your overall sense of, are you whimsical? Like, I think people that are more whimsical or romantic are probably thinking more like you or I. Oh, like superpower. We're not even
Right.
thinking about real life,
No,
right?
no, I want to be able to fly tomorrow.
But
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are more realistic or pragmatic, and they might answer this question in a completely different way. I think I could very easily see somebody say that they wish they could, wake up in the morning with the ability to solve world hunger, or
Yeah.
something that is a lot more meaningful than wanting a superpower.
But with the superpower, you might be able to solve world hunger. You know
Right.
what I mean?
So, perhaps that would be something you need to clarify
Right,
in this
right. I want this
conversation.
superpower so that I can solve world hunger.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But that's you're supposed to answer honestly, though,
But
and that
maybe
would be very calculated.
that would like turn you into like a wheat tree or something. You know what I'm saying? Like you would just be spouting out food. That would be your thing. You would just be like a living garden.
Oh, if you're solving world hunger,
Right, right.
Well, insects are now the wave of the
next
future.
thing,
So
right.
perhaps you just actually want to turn into a giant cockroach.
Ooh.
Set 2. Let's get a little more personal with these questions. So set 2. They're actually honestly kind of similar. And I don't feel that these ones are more probing necessarily. One of the ones that jumps out at me is, what is the greatest accomplishment of your life? But how is that very different than what's the thing you're most grateful for? It's very similar. And if anything, it actually feels less personal to me. So I'm curious to see what direction these questions take us.
What is your most treasured memory? That's a good one. And also sort of contingent on the fact that we're sort of disregarding how inaccurate human memories are. Like our brain fills in details for memories, especially the older they are. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like your most treasured memory. That's a tough one.
So are you saying that you don't feel that this would be an effective question then?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, it's so that's it just seems like a ridiculous question. Like your most treasured memory, you're definitely not going to share with someone you just met.
But you have to. That's the whole point of the exercise, is you have to answer the 36 questions truthfully.
Yeah,
so
true.
So you would have to come up with one.
I couldn't even come up with my most treasured memory.
It's hard.
Yeah. Like, how does one quantify that? What is your most terrible memory?
Well, I think that in the context of this 36 questions exercise, you already are revealing so much about yourself in a short span of time in this rapid fire fashion. So I think you're already going to have talked about so many other aspects of your life at this point that by the time you get to question 17, treasured memory, like the floodgates are already open. You're already talking. You're probably already taking a walk down memory lane. And you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I hear where your hesitation with the question comes from, and I see why you don't think that it would be effective. I feel ambivalent about that question.
I do like the first question of set 2. If a crystal ball could tell you the truth about yourself, your life, the future, or anything else, what would you want to know? I think that's sort of it's like, you can be as revealing as you want with it. It gives the person responding a degree of control, because I would definitely want to know about the future, but I wouldn't really want to know about myself. It would be more about like what else is going on, but somebody else might want to know about themselves.
Because you could tell the truth about yourself, your life, the future, or anything else.
Yeah.
It's a very open-ended question.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Open-ended questions are the best ones. We have an episode about it. I'll link it.
That's why I think this one is such a good one, because they're not also, I mean, they are sort of open-ended. Like, what is your most terrible memory? You could pick a memory that was just bad and use that. You know what I mean? But ideally, you're giving them the worst memory.
Oh, that was actually a question.
That is the question. Yeah.
I thought that you were offering that as an alternative to the treasured memory question. I didn't realize it was actually another one of the questions.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, moving on. How close and warm is your family? Do you feel childhood was happier than most other people's? So again, we do get this family aspect. Now that I'm looking at these questions a little more carefully, I actually think that so far in set 1 and set 2, the questions are actually rather mirrored in the content that they're asking, but they are just a different take on it. So my example, in set 1, the first question is, given choice of anyone in the world, whom would you want as a dinner guest? In set 2, the first question is, if you crystal ball could tell you the truth about yourself, your life, the future, anything else, what would you want to know? So see how those are similar questions in a way?
Yeah.
And then the second question from set 1, would you like to be famous? In what way? The second question from set 2, is there something you've dreamed of for a long time? Why haven't you done it? So it seems that as you go down, the questions seem to be...
They're definitely related in some way, yeah.
And it's like a different take on it.
Yeah. And the first two, like the first set is mainly about like the person who is being asked. In the second one, it's more like, you know, this is super personal, like more value stuff. You know what I mean? Like, what does friendship mean to you?
And
like
it seems like the second set seems to focus more on family and relationships.
Yeah.
And the first is more whimsical. The first set, in my opinion, is more like whimsical and lighthearted. Do you have a secret hunch about how you will die?
Yeah. Do you have a secret hunch about how you'll die?
I think I'll drown.
No, no. I'm not going to let you drown.
That's the thing I'm most terrified about of dying, so that's why I think it'll probably be the thing that happens.
No.
But that's not why people are listening. Okay, set 3. Let's move into the most probing questions here. The ones that are supposed to be most intimate and foster the most closeness.
This is going to be intense.
Let's see. One of my favorites from this set is, tell your partner what you like about them. Be very honest this time, saying things that you might not say to someone you've just met. That one, I just think like that would really throw me for a loop if I had gone through 24 questions so far with a complete stranger. 27, excuse me. This is the 28th prompt or question. So this person's still a stranger, and now you have to be very honest, tell them what you like about them in a way that is saying things that you might not say to someone you've just met. I mean, I laughed a second ago, and I think I would actually laugh if I was doing this in real life with someone, because I have just met you. So like, how am I supposed to say things I might not say to someone I've just met? Like, the whole conversation at this point, we've already had 27 questions that we've asked each other. We're strangers. Like,
that's a lot of questions.
I don't, you already are saying things that you might not say at this point.
Oh, hopefully, yes. I mean, the authors of the study would hope that at this point you have definitely said something that you would not have said under ordinary circumstances. Right. You know what I mean? So
right, because we're trying to create closeness here. The other thing that I think is really humorous about this question is that it is question 28. So there's 36 questions. The questions are not over.
Yeah.
What if like you don't really like, tell your partner what you like about them. So it doesn't say anything negative, but what if you 27 questions in, you actually really don't like this person?
And then you've got to lie.
But it says to be very honest. So would you just have to find like, I like your boldness with having this conversation with me that's clearly not going well.
Yeah.
Like, would you want to say something like that?
Yeah, you'd be like, I appreciate your openness in participating in this, even though I can tell you don't like me.
Or I don't like you.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, I mean, given that there are
maybe that's what question 28 is. Maybe it's your opportunity to tap out.
Yes. Yeah. It could also go precipitously wrong, very quickly. Saying things that you might not say to someone you've just met. There are reasons that people do not say certain things to people that they have just met.
Right.
So this could become a problem, and depending on the scenario, it could really go awry.
I'd be curious to know the percentage of people that felt that they had created closeness or created a bond at the end of these 36 questions. Because obviously throughout the course of the study, they felt that this was effective to a certain degree.
Right.
That was the conclusion of the study, was that they did indeed feel that it would create some form of closeness or
yes, not necessarily
relational intimacy.
Right. Like certainly it would help foster a friendship.
Right.
Not necessarily like a romantic relationship, but it was like there was something to be said for it.
Right.
It was something
in that it does create some sort of connection, I guess was specifically the word they used. That it creates a connection, but it might not create all of those other parts that come along with the relationship. And I guess I would be curious to know the actual percentage or what those actual numbers looked like in terms of how effective these 36 questions were.
Yeah, it would be really, I mean, they actually set the questions up really good because 28 tells that your partner something you like about them, and then 29 is share an embarrassing moment about yourself. So if you did butcher that first part in 28, in 29 you can just share with your partner what just happened 30 seconds ago.
Right. Yeah. They do have a really nice flow to them.
Yeah. Yeah. And now then the next one is, when did you last cry in front of another person? Also quite intimate.
Right. Tell your partner something that you like about them already. But that's kind of, so at this point you're really getting to, they do kind of escalate. And again, we're seeing this almost continuation of similar ideas, but said in different ways, which is interesting. I don't know if I've shared this on the podcast before, but Victor does know. My mom has this thing that she likes to do with me where when we have a conversation, she oftentimes tells me a story, and she'll tell me the same story, but in a different way. And my mom is ESL, English is her second language. And I don't know, she's never told me outright that this is why she does this, but I think that she does it because she wants to make sure that she's communicating herself effectively, and she wants to make sure that whoever's listening to her is really going to get the point. And so she's trying to offer different ways to get to the same idea.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like that's what these questions are doing. Like,
that's true.
They're just offering, at the core of all of these questions, we're trying to get to, like, what are your core values? How sensitive are you? Are you more romantic? Are you more pragmatic? Are you more based in reality? Like, these are some of the common themes that I'm seeing in all of these questions, and they are just being reiterated in different language. So I find that interesting because I do think that, this is just a Brenda thought, I do think that at the end of the day, when you're talking about relationships and closeness with people, that's what we ultimately all seek out, right? In our relationships, we seek out people that have similar interests, similar life goals, similar values, similar politics. And so that is your, and how you interact with people in your relationships is very important as well. Do you place the same amount of value into your relationships as the other person, so on and so forth?
Yeah.
So these questions are really getting at all of those, base core things,
the underlying principles by which you live. Yeah.
Right. But they're just asking it in many different ways. And so I suppose once you know that much about a person, After these 36 questions, you might not necessarily like each other, but you would have some form of closeness.
Yeah, there's definitely a bond because some of the questions are, they're just not all that ordinary. You'd be like, oh yeah, I just had this sort of strange directed conversation with somebody for, I imagine going through this to a full extent would take at least an hour between two people.
Oh,
Like at
easily.
the very, you could go for 3 hours.
I think
if you actually liked each other.
I think it would need to take at least an hour and a half, even if you didn't like each other. It's 36 questions and each person is answering it. So if you only take a minute per question
per person,
that's already like an hour.
Yeah.
But
so you could really...
I think, share a personal problem and ask your partner's advice on how he or she might handle it. Also, ask your partner to reflect back to you how you seem to be feeling about the problem you've chosen. That took me like 20 seconds to say.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to be able to ask you that question and then also have you answer it in the matter of a minute.
Yeah.
It would take some time.
Yeah, that's actually a good one. Like a hypothetical advice scenario. I think that's pretty good.
Well, that is the last question in the set as well.
It is.
And the last thing we'll be discussing today, because we are at the end of our 30 minutes. Darn. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Victor, for being my co-host. And I'll be back. Victor will not be back next week, but I'll be back next week with a new episode. See you next week.